Hey YouTube, I'm Lucky, and in today's video we're going to be reading a Reddit post of an LFG horror story. Now if you've ever used LFG in order to find a raid group, you know what it's like. It's rough out there. Sometimes you meet some real weirdos, but this story really takes the cake. I myself remember using LFG for the first year I played Destiny, and it was rough. It was absolutely terrible. Now having a friend group in order to pick up for raids is so much better. But let's go ahead and start with this right here. It says, I always thought people's horror stories about LFG raids were exaggerations, but after Sherpaing 30 clears, I finally ran into the group you all talk about that ruins your entire LFG experience, and boy, I'm sorry I ever doubted you. I should start this out by saying I work with the developmentally disabled and folks suffering from various forms of dementia. I don't say that to humble brag, only to say that my level of patience is likely higher than the average person's. I actually do the raids to test this patience and to try and grow as a person. I know this is really coming off as a humble brag, but I used to have anger issues and social anxiety, and doing this stuff really helps. That said, I just spent the last 4 hours helping someone trying to Sherpa 4 people through the raid, and it was truly something. That already sounds like insanity to me. Trying to help Sherpa 4 people through the raid sounds rough. Me personally, I would probably only do 3 people at maximum, but ideally maybe helping 2 people through would be the best. The problem is you just can't have 4 people on the fire team that are just completely unknown factors. You don't know their skill levels or their awareness of the raid or their awareness of Destiny mechanics. But props to them for giving this a try. Here we go. I wasn't even Sherping. I often join when someone else is teaching, when they post looking for 2 more willing to teach, so that if they do struggle, I can step in, and between me and the Sherpa, we can usually 2-man clutch while the other 4 learn the mechanics. It usually works well, but not this time. It started off with racial slurs and quickly went downhill from there. Kids will be kids is the saying, and I try not to judge, but I asked them politely not to go there, and they obliged. After that, I didn't think anything of it, and we began the entrance of the raid. At this point, one of the new people started purposefully dying from frostbite, which quickly triggered the other 3 new people. It took us an hour to Sparrow to the actual first encounter. Yep, that's it. That's it for me. That's literally, thankfully, I'm not a raid Sherpa, because that's where I would draw the line right there, okay? If we're at the Sparrow encounter for 1 hour, no. I could probably make a video how I talk about how I'm one of the worst raid Sherpas. I only raid with my friends though, so it's not a big deal. Like, it's not like completely random people, but I only raid with my friends. And so what I do on the raid Sparrow encounter, and you can take note of this if you like it, I Sparrow to the end every time, and I almost never die. And when I do get to the end finally, I clear out the Briggs, and then I sit there and wait. And if my teammates die a couple times while I'm waiting, I'm like, all right, you're going to have to solo it later, you know? Like, I don't want to sit there and wait the whole time. I'm probably the worst teammate ever, but the thing is that Sparrow encounter is so easy. You can just go in and solo that yourself. So, like, wasting 5 people's time when you're struggling really hard to make it through that encounter seems a lot less productive than just wasting one person's time, that person going in solo and doing it by themselves and figuring it out later. And I especially just have little patience when it's like, we all get to the encounter at the exact same time, so if you're like new or not understanding how it works, just follow someone else and then you won't get stuck by the little missiles that blow up and you won't die as much. And like, you know what I'm saying? Just, I know that there's a learning curve and it's tough, maybe your first time ever going through it, so I try to give a little bit of leeway, let him die a few times, but I digress. I'll move on with the rest of the story here. I uphold that I'm absolutely fine with people not knowing what to do. If I didn't think that, I shouldn't be joining teaching raids, but these people were making fun of the guy teaching the raid and then calling him sensitive when he tried to defend himself. I don't know about this one, but this would be the easiest boot to orbit I've ever had. If someone's making fun of me when I'm trying to teach them the raid, that's a straight boot to orbit, like instant. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. You're trying to raid Sherpa someone and they're making fun of you? Do you boot to orbit? Moving on with the story though. They wiped immediately and repeatedly and then yelled at him for not telling them what to do. At which point I stepped in and sent them my raid guide I made for new folks. They then started making fun of me for having no life. Again, boot to orbit. They've now made fun of the raid Sherpa and then the secondary Sherpa. This is an easy boot to orbit. You, your Sherpa buddy, boot all 4 of them. Find new people on LFG. Easy. Moving on though, which is fine, but being the butt of people's jokes is not new to me. As I've said, I have thick skin, so honestly, that was perfect. They could make fun of me to dispel their excess emotion, the teacher wouldn't be stressed, and the raid would go on. This whole thing just sounds like a raid LFG dysfunctional relationship. What the hell? I mean, maybe it's different for everyone, and maybe everyone has their own different sensibilities. You know, you're trying to beat the raid, you're trying to just complete the encounter, so maybe you're willing to put up with a higher threshold, but me personally, I'm just like, no. I've booted plenty of people to orbit, and I probably will continue to do so because, I don't know, there's something about just being a dick inside Destiny that just doesn't make any sense to me. The whole point of the encounter is to just have some fun and chill and get some good loot, you know? So if you're going into it with any sort of attitude, when you're the one getting carried, then you're just all out of sorts. But continuing on, this piling on of emotion immaturity came to a precipice when the raid guide, who at this point was swapping roles at Atrax, going both space and Earth, doing more than he would need to, even if he was doing a 3-man, forgot to send down an extra pod for the final damage phase, leaving us with only 5 people to do it. We beat the encounter, but multiple of the new people at this point started calling him out, despite the fact that this guy and I did literally 75% of the damage to Atrax. While swapping roles between us, they all talked over the entire spacewalk, talking shit to the guy, ruining that experience, but he was a champ about it and continued showing them where the chests were and all the tablets. These guys were still talking shit at this point? Like, what the hell? Like, this is a true nightmare. He starts teaching the next encounter, the ease encounter before the final Taniks boss fight, and they purposely start interrupting him, at which point he DMs me, "I can't believe this," to which I respond, "I know, but you're doing great and we're really close. I don't think they understand just how toxic they are being." We get through the encounter very fast, but wipe. We get it on our second run, but the raid guy dies once again because he's swapping positions and helping these new folks out. They get to the final dunks, and they all refuse to res him. I don't have a token as I've already had to use it to get them up. Of course, then they start making fun of him and piling on. Dear God. Okay. We get to the final boss encounter, and 2 of them decide they want to start the encounter immediately before being told what to do. The other 2 turn off their mics and don't turn them back on for the rest of the encounter. They force the Sherpa to teach them, refusing also to communicate in chat, only responding by nodding yes or no to him, by shaking their character's head. All the while the other 2 are purposely starting the encounter multiple times. We get through a few runs, and just before we get the final clear, 2 of them rage quit and leave, leaving this guy who spent all his time trying to get a Sherpa clear high and dry. The other 2 leave immediately, and him and I find a few replacements and get it done 10 minutes later. Wow, what a crazy story. Let me know your thoughts about that story in the comment section below. Also, let me know your LFG horror stories if you've ever had any. Me personally, I do have a horror story of sorts. I used to play Destiny 1 back in the day, LFG, and there was this guy I would always play with. He played at the same time, and he had just the most painfully disgusting name to say. His name was Cumosaurus Rex, and I remember every time I played with him, I was just like so awkward because we were doing the Crota raid, and I was just like, I would call out to him like, "Hey, Cumosaurus, like, come over here," you know, like, And like, you know, you don't even want to say the word Cumosaurus, like you want to abbreviate it. I probably should have just called him Rex, honestly. I should have just called him Rex. But unfortunately I didn't, and it just made playing with this guy every time so painful. I could not stand saying his name. It was so cringe. But let this video serve as a lesson to you. Don't take people's bullshit. If people are shitheads in Destiny, you don't need them. You don't need to Sherpa them. Just move on to the next group. And not everyone has the luxury like myself of having a ton of friends to play with at any given time, but building up a friend group of people that are chill and cool is definitely the best experience in Destiny, especially for raids. And that being said, I wish you luck out there, and I give all my best wishes out there to the patient Sherpas out there helping people through the raids. Make sure to subscribe to this channel with notifications on if you want to stay up to date on all things Destiny 2 Beyond Light, and I'll see you in the next video. Later.